Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining. This is Jason Mascherelli. I lead go-to-market for Launchpad, and today we're going to be talking about how to leverage our Launchpad Explore free edition, really focusing in on using our AI blueprinting capability, and also talking a bit about how you can do cost estimating. And so with that, we'll get started. I'm joined by Tim Miranda, who's a fellow architect and a key team member for the Launchpad team here at Pega. He is part of our Launchpad provider success team, working closely with all of our customers and software companies that we help build their products on Launchpad, helping to guide them on architecture development and really getting the most out of the platform. And then again, I'm Jason Mascherelli. I lead go-to-market for Launchpad. I also run our corporate venture fund, Pega Ventures. And so today, as I said, we're going to be focused on really Launchpad Explore, which is our free edition. It's a great way to quickly get introduced to Launchpad for prototyping using our GenAI capabilities and cost estimation. And so we'll talk through both of those capabilities and features of Explore, talk about how it fits into the development lifecycle and ultimately your journey as a provider building on Launchpad. And then we'll talk, we'll get into questions. So I encourage you to submit questions as you're on, and happy to answer those towards the end, and look forward to connecting with you as well in person. All right, before we get going, we've got a couple other webcasts as part of this series coming up. So the last one that we did was really focused on kind of a high-level overview of the whole entire platform of Launchpad. Today is kind of jumping into the free edition around Explore, and then the next one is going to go through really how you use Launchpad to build agentic workflow products. And then the following one on November 20th is going to be focused on adding AI features to your existing products, so you can really accelerate some AI feature development and capabilities that you want to take to market to your clients. So just diving in here, for those of you who are maybe new to Launchpad, we're really a fully managed low-code platform for really built for software companies that want to build highly scalable, predictable workflow applications. And really you can do that in three ways. So one is build new applications from scratch and really leverage the platform really to build your entire product and run it on our platform. We have subscriber management and runtime, auto scaling, and so on. And so it's great for startups or existing software companies that want to launch new products. And then enhancing is another prominent use case, which is you've got an existing product in market and you're looking to build out a new complementary product that probably integrates with your existing core product, typically around agentic workflow, really moving to executing work and outcomes. And so the platform's great for building that out and really augmenting and starting to help you move more into agentic capabilities. And then replace is really, as you've gotten more comfortable with the platform, we have now software companies that typically founded before 2020 that have some tech debt, or they're startups that built quickly and then now really need to rebuild their tech stack to really prepare for scale. They typically are looking to Launchpad as a way to really rebuild their products. So Fiello is a great example of this, where they had a loyalty management platform for B2B and B2C, and they had it running on Salesforce and another version of their platform on Azure. And they basically, over the last 4 months, rebuilt their entire loyalty product on Launchpad, and now they're positioned to have more of a agentic AI-enabled modern application that they can scale and go forward from. In terms of the journey, and this is kind of to just set context for today. So typically companies that are building with Launchpad, and we refer to those organizations as providers, because essentially they're building products on Launchpad and providing those applications to their subscriber clients. And so really step one is where we're going to focus on today, which is prototyping with our GenAI Blueprint capability, which is really very different from what you've seen out there in the market today with AI code generators and like Cursor, Lovable, Replit, and so on. But with those, you're typically still outputting code. We have a model-driven approach, and so the AI is actually using our best practices around business workflows that we've been proven over the last 40 years with large-scale enterprises, and essentially through text prompting allow you to very quickly build out your flows, your personas, your database structure, your UI, and then very quickly move that into production and runtime and deploy that to your clients. And so it's a very different model. So I think you'll get a sense of how it's different today. The next thing, which we will talk about today as well, is how do you estimate costs? So instead of having to manage your cloud computing and all of your different services, you may have 20 or 30 services that a software company might be leveraging. We basically abstract that into Launchpad Units, which is driven by reads and writes, which really makes it easy for you to essentially see for an end-to-end workflow or an outcome that you're driving, what your cost will be per outcome. And so we'll talk a bit about the usage calculator, and then I'm happy to get on calls with folks to really dive into your specific use case or market you're going after and help you with understanding how you can leverage this new kind of model for building and estimating and taking products to market really around kind of outcome-based models. And then the next one, which is really finishing off your app and getting it ready to take to market, is again what we're going to talk about in our next webinar. All right, so with that, I am going to just jump into our website real quick. And so I would encourage you, so we've recently made a ton of updates to our website. And so I encourage you to just, kind of go through, check out, some of the stories of companies. Quavo's a great one. They're a software company that's built entirely on Pega Platform and technology and capabilities. And they scaled from a couple $1 million in revenue to $50 million, and recently had a $300 million private equity financing. And so great success story. Fiello, again, an existing software company that replatformed. And so check out some of those stories. And then some of the reviews and other case studies as well. And then we also have G2 reviews that you can also see what some of our clients are saying. But then just related to today, you'll see the start free button. So if you haven't gotten going, I encourage you to go to the homepage, click in at launchpad.io/signup. And really these are our pricing plans. Start with Explore, it's free. All you need to do is put in your work email, and then essentially we'll send you a code. You click through, you get access, and you can fully build out and leverage our GenAI development capabilities, as well as the Unit Estimator. And then once you're kind of comfortable with the use case and the platform, or if you want to talk to me and my team about fit and how we could help you with really fine-tuning your blueprint and getting ready for the build, or have questions about is Launchpad right for you or not, we're happy to help you work through that and get our provider success team engaged to really make sure you're making the right decision. And then once you're ready, we can move you on to a production plan where you've got full runtime access to really build and finish your application and take it to market. So with that, I will turn it over to you, Tim, and let you take us through.
Let's just start here. So hopefully you got my screen shared properly here.
Yes.
So I've got a Word document where I've got this idea for an app that, let me just get that going here. So I want to build a governance, risk, and compliance application on Launchpad. I want to target small and medium-sized businesses. So I think it's a pretty good idea. And I have kind of a traditional requirements of design app here. It has information about who's going to be using the application, the different data policies involved. And ultimately, it's like a workflow-centric application, right? It's guiding the employees of my subscribers through doing an audit process, checking vendors, assessing user access, kind of all the big kind of pieces of a basic GRC application. And this doc talks about the relationships between the different things that would be in my application. So it's pretty good kind of high-level design or requirements for my application. But these, this is a very static document here. If I share this with my stakeholders and colleagues, it's hard to get a sense of like, what is my application going to do? What's it going to look like? What are the pieces of it? So what I'm going to do is actually...
And just a quick comment on that, Tim. I think we're finding this is a great best practice, and I've been doing this myself for like app ideas I've got is, I'll first jump into an LLM, collaborate around a PRD, hash it out a little bit, do some market research, and then that's a great way to kind of take that and get started. And so I'd encourage folks, if you've got ideas for apps or you want to start to research where there may be complementary opportunities in the space that you sell into, kind of collaborate with the LLMs, build those things out, add your own ideas, and then, Tim's going to take you through how you kind of turn that into a prototype and actually a PDF document that you could use, or actually turn it into an app into production on Launchpad.
Yeah, exactly. And sometimes you may already have some of these design docs sitting around that, like, you're just not quite sure how to take the next step here. So I've gone on to launchpad.io and started a new blueprint. And let's see what we can do here. So I could use these industry templates here, but I already have my requirements document. I just showed it to you. So I'm actually going to upload it into my blueprint as a supporting asset. So I'm just going to grab the Word document that I had there and give it to Blueprint. And what's going to happen here is that Blueprint is using generative AI to analyze that document and really distill out what it is, what are the main outcomes, personas, data that's involved here. And it's figured that all out. So I'm just going to kind of move ahead in my Blueprint here. It's created basics of my app. It's pulled out a functional description. I'm pretending to build this for Pega, so I'm just going to put Pegasystems as the organization.
And sorry to stop you there,
Yeah,
but
please.
you could actually, in that prompt, just type in a couple sentences of what you wanted to build, and we'll actually go ahead and build it out as well.
Yep.
But kind of a best practice is, if you've got more detail in IP,
Right.
you can upload like you did, right?
Yeah, you could start from scratch there and just type in a couple sentences of the type of app you're trying to build and choose the industry and stuff, and it'll generate everything that you need there. In this case, I sort of had a starting idea document, and so I'm using that to help generate my blueprint, but you can do it either way. Um, so yeah, so it's taken that supporting document and it's generated the main components of my blueprint that I'm going to start to look at, modify, extend, and collaborate with my colleagues on to sort of figure out the next steps. But let's take a look at what it's put together here. So it's distilled out 4 basic workflows, or case types as we call it, for my application, because really my app is all about automating and guiding users through the complicated compliance and governance processes that they're facing, that they're kind of doing with Excel spreadsheets today. So it's determined that there's like an overall audit process here, and we'll dive into the details of that and make some changes to the blueprint, see how it looks, kind of work on it iteratively. It's figured out that there's some sub processes here around the workflow around access review, make sure users have the right access to different pieces of software that are in my subscribers' organizations, and also assessing the vendors, the hardware, software vendors that my clients are using. So, this looks good so far. I can, of course, ask Blueprint to generate more workflows, right? So it can use generative AI and create even more robust kind of workflows and processes that it thinks is going to need for my application. For this example here, I'm sort of thinking about like an MLP1 of my app. Like, what do I need to get to market, get feedback from users, get people subscribing to it and using it? So I think these 4 core workflows are a good starting point here. So I'll move ahead. Let me take a look at the audit process itself. And this is sort of like I said, the primary outcome of my app. This is where people are really going to get a lot of value out of it. So here, so remember in the Word document, I sort of had an outline of what I thought the audit process needed to entail, but that's really hard to visualize, right? Both from what is it going to do and how's it going to work for the end user. So Blueprint creates this awesome visualization here of the audit process, the 4 basic stages of it, where I capture information from the users, I do some validation and check against policies, automate things like checking for risks and stuff like that, and then wrapping up the audit process and making notifications. So if I tried to describe that just in the Word doc and I shared that with one of my stakeholders, it'd be hard for them to say, like, what are you talking about here? But I can go in, I have a good visualization of my workflow. I can make changes right away. So in the blueprint, maybe I want to kind of be more clear about what this human step is doing. So I'm going to kind of change the label of it. These are the fields or the business data that I'm going to present to the user. And I want to make sure that that makes sense. Just make a small change there. I can take a look at the next human step in my workflow here, where we're going to figure out who needs to work on this particular review process. And I can decide, this is the right kind of information I want to show to the user. And right off the bat, I realized I need some sort of like description too of what they're trying to do. And maybe I need the user to definitely provide me some information there. So I mark it as required. Um, by making these changes here in the blueprint, when I share it with stakeholders, they'll see what, exactly what I'm talking about here, what's required, what's optional data. And so it's very easy to kind of visualize what's happening in my workflows, in my user interactions here. Um, and so that's when I first start with a blueprint, whether I started with a supporting asset or from scratch, I kind of take a look at what is my basic workflow? Does this make sense? Um, and go from there. Before I go really deep into changing the blueprint and sort of customizing it and adding more things to it, um, I want to kind of treat it like a business analyst or developer. I want to iterate on my idea very quickly. So before I really kind of really change the model and add some more stuff to it and enhance it, I want to see what this is going to look like for my end users. So Blueprint has this awesome capability called live preview, where before I've even really done much with the blueprint, I can go in and see what is this app going to feel like for the end users of the application. And I can quickly change the look and feel here right within Blueprint. Um, choose different themes, try out different stuff. But just by doing this live preview very early on in my blueprint lifecycle, it's giving me a bunch of ideas of, oh, I'm going to need this other set of data. I really want to make sure that the users are making choices around X, Y, and Z in my workflow. So instead of looking at a boring Word doc and trying to figure that stuff out, or even looking at the workflow design itself, I can act as an end user here directly in Blueprint. The other cool thing is that Blueprint is generating stuff. So it's generating sample records that are relevant to my application. So I can see, okay, the user is going to select a particular framework to perform this audit process. I didn't have to specify those or create those myself. Saves me a lot of time when I'm just trying to ideate and design my initial application. And I can see exactly what the user is going to see here. And so and I kind of look at this holistically, right? Like I'm looking at this whole case-wide display, and I'm saying, when my users are walking through an audit process, what are the important things they need to always see? Like what really kind of differentiates this audit process for, GDPR versus another one? What details do they need to see? What business data about the audit process is important every step of the way for the users that are interacting with this, that are doing the reviews, doing the processing, and things like that. So this live preview gives me a chance to really see that all in one place, instead of having to guess about what it's going to look like. I can also see it across different channels too, right? So if that was on the desktop, but that same workflow, those same views, those same tasks, I can view from a mobile experience. So maybe they're using an iPad or a mobile device, and those same fields that I was prompting for, I can see here from a mobile point of view. And I can even see what it's going to look like from like an agentic style chat conversation. What if I wanted to provide my customers with a way to just chat with the application, start an audit, see what it's going to ask them for? I can see all that here in live preview, without having to go and build those screens separately or sort of use Figma or something to figure out what it might look like. I can really get direct feedback as I'm elaborating my blueprint. Um, so yeah, so if we go back to the audit process here, let's see what other steps we want to look at. So, that I want to kind of, when I'm first working my blueprint, go through each piece of it and say, like, what are the important parts here? Or here are the human steps, here's the decisions, here's the notifications. But a workflow is not just the process and the life cycle, it's also the data model. What is the supporting data, the user input, the calculations, everything I need to drive this process forward. And Blueprints generated a very robust data model for me just from that one Word document that I provided it. All the things I need to kind of capture along the way, pull from external systems, have the user select from, are all represented here in this audit process data model. I can see what the kind of key fields are here as well, with my primary fields, and I can make changes right away, add more fields, have it generate more fields for me. but I can definitely see I've got everything I need here to get started with this audit process, and really make it something that I think I can bring to market. So yeah, so let's see what we can look at next here. So one of the things that we see here in my data model is that there's fields that are sort of pointing at other data objects, right? The compliance framework to choose to do the audit process, the users to review for access and things like that. So that's where my case is actually using the data objects that are defined in my blueprint. And we have this really cool like relationship diagram here that you can see right within Blueprint. So for my audit process workflow, it's got some business fields here, like what controls we're going to review. And those are right now using what we call local system of record, which is just the Launchpad internal database here where those are going to be stored. But it's figured out from my supporting document, the Word doc, that I also have some sort of external SOR. So I have a sale point system where I'm going to be able to get user access information, what users have access to what things, what roles they have, and use that as part of my user access workflow. So this view is really useful because it kind of shows the relationship between my workflows, my data, my integrations. So let's take a look at my data and integrations here, right? So um, I've got a few different local data objects to kind of support my workflows along the way. The sets of frameworks that I'm going to want to audit, SOC 2, HIPAA, et cetera, the policies that apply to those different things. And just like my workflows, these data objects have their own data model, right? So I can see what was generated here initially in my blueprint. I'm going to want to, as I evolve my blueprint, maybe add to this, add some more specific fields and things that I know I'm going to need along the way. That's easy. I can just add fields here really quickly. Um, and again, just with Blueprint and Launchpad, I don't have to think about database schema, infrastructure, things like that. I just say, this is my workflow. These are my data objects, my records, and these are the fields that I need for it. Launchpad and Blueprint take care of the rest for me. So let's see here. So yeah, so I got my basic data objects. And like I said before, I've got that one external data object, the sale point, the user access information from SailPoint. But I think I also kind of want to introduce a bigger change here in my blueprint. Right now, I've got the vendor data. So that's the vendors that we're going to do assessments on periodically. And my initial blueprint made the vendor data, yeah, it's right down here, made it just kind of sourced locally. So I would just kind of maintain a list of vendors locally within Launchpad. But for this example, I know I actually have like a REST interface where I can go from external SOR and get a list of vendors from each subscriber. So I'm just going to remove this data object from my blueprint. Not a big deal. And that's the beauty of Blueprint here is you can make big changes to it, like small changes, iterate on it, try some stuff out. And so it's telling me that I'm using this vendor object in a few different workflows in my blueprint. That's cool. So I'm just going to remove that. And what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to create a new vendor data object, but I'm going to import it. I have an open API spec from that external system of record that tells me about the REST interface, the data model. And I'm just going to take that YAML file and I'm going to import it into Blueprint. Blueprint's going to use generative AI here again. It's everywhere throughout our systems. And it's going to figure out what's kind of coming from this endpoint. And so it's figured out that this has a list of vendors, vendor details. And so just kind of asking me, does that make sense? And that looks good. So now we can see that we have a vendor data object again, but this time it's not sourcing locally, it's sourcing from my new external system of record that I imported. Very simple data model here, just for an example. But now I've got my local Pega, my sale point, and my vendor system all defined here in the blueprint, which will come along for the ride when I import this in to start developing. So yeah, but I also, now that I have that vendor data type, it's sourced externally, I'm going to want to use it in my workflows, right? I want users to be able to select a vendor to do an assessment with. I want to show a list of vendors that they want to do as part of an audit process. So I'm going to add a new field to my audit process here using that vendor data object that we just created. So this is just enhancing the data model of my audit process. I need a list of vendors that need to be assessed. I should probably add a description here just so I know what this is for the future. And Now I've just augmented my data model for the audit process. Um, I probably should do the same thing for the vendor assessment workflow. When we're assessing a specific vendor, I need to let the user choose which vendor to actually do the assessment on, sourcing it from that same external SOR. So I'm going to add a new vendor field here as well. Um, and they're going to just choose one vendor to do the assessment with. And now that's part of my data model. I can start using it. Um, so I'm going to go back into my life cycle for the vendor assessments and add that new field here. So the first human task of my vendor assessment, I'm going to ask them to select a vendor. So I'm going to find that new field I just created there, move it up to the top. I'm not dealing with HTML, JavaScript, any screens here. I'm just saying this is a human-based step. I need to show this information to them. I need to collect this info from them and move on to the next step. And that was easy. So, like
That's
I
great.
said, yeah, go ahead.
Stop you for a second. So,
Yeah.
as I'm watching you go through this, and you've covered a lot, and
Yes.
so I want to make sure that folks catch all this, which is, really, you're collaborating with our AI blueprint capability, right? So you're not just relying on AI to generate this thing and then just push it to production, right? Because obviously, the software company, you know, they've got expertise in their area, they know what their customers need, what their pains are, and so on. And so really the AI is helping them get started quickly, really leverage kind of the knowledge that our platform has about how to build workflows. And
Mm.
then you're kind of then going in and then adding your own intellectual property to really refine and really build out and enrich that product with your knowledge of the market and what you think really customers are going to need. And so it's great to see that because that iteration process, if you're like, let's say using, a code generator or, AI to write code, you'd be wrestling with like, I want to change this, and then it's generating code and you're seeing it and it's doing different things. And so maybe talk a little bit about just how different that process is, because it feels like what you're creating here is now a structured thing, like you're not wrestling with the code.
Yeah, yeah. And I mean, I think that's the important couple dimensions there. One is that this whole time I'm working with a model, right? So I'm not, what's coming out of here as I'm making changes or asking it to generate things is not a bunch of source code that then, like you said, I would have to wrestle with or try to sort of chat with it and say, no, I didn't want that. Can you make it more like this? And sort of get stuck in a loop for a while trying to get it to do what I want. Here, it's given me an initial huge stepping stone of taking that supporting document I had and given me an initial set of workflows and everything, but not a whole bunch of code that I have to wrestle with. It's a model that I can then go and directly modify, change, have it suggest more changes along the way. So yeah, it's almost like I'm pairing up with the Blueprint technology, and we're working together on it to get to the point where I say, this really kind of reflects what I want to bring to market and kind of the IP that I know about this particular area. And I didn't have to kind of fight with it to get to that point. It's like me and the Blueprint getting it very quickly here, where I have something that I can collaborate with my team, with my stakeholders, and not have to spend kind of weeks and weeks just sort of going around in circles.
Yeah,
So
no, that's great. And I think, we see a wide range of people who will go into Blueprint and they're looking for just that immediate gratification where they'll just do a description and then they'll kind of jump through the steps and be at the end, I got my app. And then they realize, oh, it's not really exactly a commercially viable product.
right.
And so I think that it's kind of like how any of us use AI today, right? Is that, yes, you can kind of get that immediate gratification, but you actually have to like lean in and kind of interact and fine tune it and so on. And so
Right.
if you compare to the traditional product development life cycle and design phases and so on, that would take typically weeks and months, right? Even with AI, tools,
Right.
how long would you say people should tend to work with their blueprint before they kind of move it into our full dev experience?
Yeah, I mean, it depends on kind of the complexity of the app that you're looking to build, but I mean, if you've got your initial idea or you just kind of want to see what will come from it, and you've got a workflow centric app idea that you really want to get up and running with, um, you can even spend just a few days at most if you want. And if it's you and like someone else at your startup and you're kind of trying to figure out what you want to get going here, instead of passing around a bunch of Figmas and big Word docs and Excel spreadsheets, you can have it actually here, be able to live preview it, and just spend a few days really kind of refining and honing it here, and then just jump into the development.
Yeah. Yeah. And that it seems like that investment of, several hours or a few
Right.
days, depending on the scope of your app, really pays off
Yeah.
to really help you get started and really move quickly through kind of that finalizing of your app.
And
So,
even
yeah,
here with this basic kind of GRC app, this really does have everything that I would need if I want to start implementing that kind of app and get it out to market. And honestly, I really only spent like an hour on this blueprint. Maybe I would have someone go and review it, and I can show how you can collaborate with this in a little bit. But that's all time I would spend on it at that point, and then I would just start developing. So it can be as low as a couple hours of time too. So
yeah, that's awesome.
cool. All right, so we've got our new external SOR kind of pulled in here. Let's see. So yeah, so I've got my data objects, I got my workflow. Of course, I just made a change, so I like to go and iteratively live preview my app, right? So I'm going to look at my vendor assessment workflow, maybe start a new vendor assessment, and I added that new field. I like dark themes, so I'm just going to use like the
I do
dark
as
mode
well.
here, but easier on my eyes. So yeah, but let's go look. So I have that new field, the new current vendor field, and again, Blueprint is generating relevant sample records for me here, so I didn't have to create that new field, that new integration, and then also go and create 5 or 10 records just to kind of be able to preview it. Blueprint handled that for me, so I can really concentrate on, is this the user experience that I want? Is this the workflow that makes sense for my initial version of my app? And I can see that all here. So, and of course, I can make sure that I'm showing the right details along the way. The other cool part about Live Preview is that it doesn't just show me my workflows and how they work, but I can kind of see the full end-to-end app possibilities here. And it's showing me some sample dashboards and charts that kind of relevant to the assessments and audits that I would be doing with some sample data. And this is kind of like gives me a spark for a bunch of ideas. Like when I'm implementing my GRC app, these are the kind of dashboards I want. I want to add these kind of graphs. Really want to allow managers to see across different things. And so this live preview has just so many things where it gives me tons of ideas for what I want to do next with my application. I can walk through the different steps in my workflow, kind of see what's happening along the way. And when I'm building any blueprint, I'll make a change, live preview it, say, oh, okay, that makes sense. I'll see something in the live preview that makes me think, you know what else I need? I need X, Y, and Z. I'll go back to my workflows, go back to my data integrations, enhance those more, refine those more, live preview again. And you can do that so rapidly that it keeps you from getting stuck in like a waterfall type approach to developing here. It really gives you that iterative design that makes this a lot quicker.
So you're focusing less time on the tech and more time really on your unique value prop and really what you're trying to deliver to the market.
Yeah, I'm not dealing with building screens or generating data myself or importing in sample data. Um, I'm thinking about like, where's my app doing, and is it doing what's going to be great for the market? And I can think about like, what is a vendor assessment, not where am I going to get like, how am I going to show a date? Like all of that's taken off the table for me.
Yeah, yeah,
So
and this is like this essentially. I've seen some software companies play with this, and you could record it and show it as a prototype to a client and get their feedback before you even decide to invest the time to go finalize the app and say, hey, we're thinking about launching this new product. Iterate with them. Kind of get some validation, and then basically invest the extra couple of weeks to polish it up and take it out. So I think
exactly.
it's just a really powerful way to start to kind of conceptualize things. And then the other thing I just want to highlight is for folks, this is just a draft. So this is what our platform has produced on its own with your iteration. But then as you get in the full dev experience, there's a lot more you can do with the UI and the interface to really fine tune it and get it to exactly what you really need it to be. And if you do want to write code and build, custom components and such, we have ways to support that. So there's, you're not kind of bound by the capabilities of our platform either.
Yeah, yeah. This is just giving me an idea, a draft, a prototype of what it could do, how I want the end user portals to look and feel and layouts and things like that. That's all up to me as I develop the application. This is just giving me kind of a rough idea of the possibilities here. And so really easy to kind of see my app as I go. Cool. So that preview was useful. The other aspect of a blueprint and a Launchpad application are who's using it, right? The personas, the type of users that are happening here. And just kind of something I hadn't mentioned before, with Blueprint and Launchpad, you don't have to build workflows for each type of user. Like that would be, kind of in a traditional way, I might have to create an audit process for a compliance manager, a different audit process for the control, a different audit process for like an agent. Um, I don't want to do that, right? So I really think of my application from the center out as what are the core workflows and outcomes I need. And then here with the personas, I can say, these are the types of users we'll have, and I can even define what kind of access and kind of things they should be doing with the application. So you can imagine a compliance manager kind of needs broad ability to run all the different workflows, see the data, make changes. And so I can actually add role-based access control right here in the blueprint for people to review, for my stakeholders to see like, oh, that makes sense. But here I've asked Blueprint just to generate my access control here. So Blueprint looked at the fact that this was a compliance manager and the different workflows in the system and kind of gave broad access to this compliance manager, which makes sense. Like if I'm a manager for the whole app, I probably need to be able to just do everything in it. And here I'm also with the data records as well. I'm going to let Blueprint kind of give me an idea of what kind of access I should grant across, the vendor information, user access information. I'll make some changes here to let it kind of access everything. But this is kind of associates these different personas with what they can do with the workflows, what they can do with the data objects in my application. But it's all kind of separate from each other, so I'm not having to write whole swaths of my design and application for a particular persona. They're just kind of associated with it. Makes it a lot easier. And then finally, in my initial blueprint here, I can kind of see a summary of every part of my application, the case types, the workflow, everything like that. I can download it as a PDF. Um, you know, before I figure my before I say I'm done with my blueprint, I might be working in a small team or it's me and another stakeholder with this idea. So I can very easily share it with those people and I can decide whether they can view it, whether they can also edit it. But instead of passing around Word docs, Excel spreadsheets, Figmas, things like that, I can send this actual blueprint to someone on my team and they can take a look at it, they can live preview it, do all the things that I just showed you, and they can also make changes. They can modify data model, do all that stuff. And so you get this sort of live in real-time collaboration that lets you move a lot faster as well because your stakeholders can look at this and say, perfect, or let's change this thing. And you can very quickly iterate on that, preview it again, and say, awesome, let's start building this. And to do that, and we're going to talk about that in the future webcast actually, I can download my blueprint and then pull it into Launchpad Studio to start developing. But I also can download my blueprint to use it with our pricing estimator, which I'll talk about next. So let me bring that up here.
And while you're doing that, so it's cool. Like you could, all the work that you've done, you basically now get a fully detailed PDF document of that. And so if you decide you want to take that and go build it somewhere else, you're welcome to do it with our free tools. But I think what you'll find is that, you can basically, essentially, you're so close to being able to take that to market and monetize it that why would you want to do that? But, we're not locking you in. You've got that documentation for all of that time that your team has spent really trying to spend, design time designing this and output it and share it with your teams and maybe your investors and so on. So,
Yep, exactly. And you can also take this blueprint, like you said, share just the PDF or share the actual blueprint experience with your team.
yeah.
It's up to you. So, all right. So now that I've got this initial blueprint here, one thing I can do is from launchpad.io under our pricing section, I can use the units estimator. And this is a really cool way to sort of get a rough sense of, based on the complexity of my application and the usage kind of on a monthly basis, what can I expect in terms of unit consumption, which is really kind of how we deal with charging for the application. And here I've uploaded that blueprint, which I just exported a couple of minutes ago, and it's identified that there's sort of this core workflow or process in it, the audit process, right? Because that kind of drives everything in my application. Um, and I can think about the usage level here, like on a monthly basis per subscriber. If I had this app out in the wild being used, what am I thinking about in terms of the number of audit processes that are getting worked through on a monthly basis? And I'm targeting, in this fictional example, I'm targeting small and medium businesses for my GRC solution. So really probably less than 500 audit processes getting worked through in a month per subscriber. So I'm going to click like low usage level. And you can see here that Launchpad's estimated, give me a swag estimate of about 200,000, 300,000 units per month per subscriber. And, I could also choose different usage levels and kind of model what that would be. But this gives me a nice starting point to think about um, kind of what the consumption of Launchpad here for this app that I built. And of course, I can go back, modify my blueprint, get feedback from stakeholders, try out some different things, maybe add some different workflows, different stages, come back to the unit estimator, take a look again. You can do all of this very quickly, very iteratively.
Yeah. So if I could just stop you there. So
Yeah.
this is like really powerful for people because before spending any money on Launchpad, basically you've built out your whole prototype. Now you're able to say, okay, how much is this actually going to cost, and is it viable for me to take this product to market? And how much margin can I make? And so this tool is actually it's simple, but it's very powerful to just at least give you that rough estimate. And so if you saw when at the beginning I showed you the pricing plans, our starting pricing plan for existing software companies is $900 a month, which comes with 5 million units per month. And so you can then see contextually, okay, how many outcomes, which in this case audit processes, could I execute, for my clients, and what's it going to cost, and then what could I charge in the market, right? And again, that's just a starting subscription price for 5 million units. And as you scale your business and as you actually start to get into volumes, the cost per unit goes down pretty dramatically, just as you would with a commit agreement with, a cloud platform as well.
Mhm.
And so just to break down the math, typically the starting point for a new subscriber on Launchpad is roughly paying about $2 per 10,000 units. And so it strikes me that probably one of the things we should do is actually show kind of the conversion of how many cents it is for this, so that you don't have to do the math. But
Yeah.
you start to get a sense that this is pretty reasonable.
Mhm.
The other powerful mechanism is everybody's now talking about outcome-based pricing, and so we refer to these as outcomes. So the outcome is process, completing an audit process. And so now you know exactly how much, or estimated how much it's going to cost you to run that end-to-end process. So if you decide to price your product on, an outcome basis, you've got clarity on that. Versus the traditional development model, you have no idea how much compute and storage and network and LLM usage and 20, 30 services until you get your AWS bill or your GCP bill. And so we're really abstracting that, and this is a powerful way before you spend weeks and months of development time.
Exactly. Yeah, we kind of just really boil it down to what is my application doing and then going from there.
Yeah,
So
great stuff.
cool. All right. So yeah, I mean, I think between the preview and this, I can get a good sense of what's going to be going on with my application here. Um, and yeah, I think that's kind of my walkthrough, start to finish, of blueprint, starting with the
Awesome.
design doc and ending up being able to understand the unit estimates for that one thing. We have some upcoming events. Just want to call out here. You can go to launchpad.io on the events page and see that we're going to be continuing the series next Thursday about building agentic workflow products. And then the next one in the series a couple weeks from now around adding AI features to your Launchpad product. And then we also have a what's new webinar coming in December as well. So make sure you go to launchpad.io and register for all of those, get them on your calendar.
Tim, that was just awesome. Thank you so much for taking time to go through all that and prep for this. I mean, it was a lot more depth than I thought we'd be able to cover on this, short, kind of 45 minutes of, and we actually showed a ton of information. And so, we often get on blueprinting sessions with, clients and prospects who just want to explore this. And, a lot of our clients have, started with a blueprint and they were like, wow, I can see how this is going to help. And then, we help them kind of get through it and get the best out of it. So happy to jump on calls and help you with that stuff. So let's jump into the Q&A. And I think, Lena, you're going to help walk us through some of the questions that have come in. And certainly, if folks have other questions, feel free to drop those into the chat.
Absolutely. Love seeing Blueprint. It's like a playground to experiment with and see how powerful AI and workflow together can be. So we have a couple questions. Jason, are all of the features of Launchpad platform what we see in Blueprint?
No, so that's what a lot of people misunderstand is Blueprint represents the core capabilities of our platform, and it represents a lot of it and really to get you started. But then our full development experience gives you a whole other set of tools and capabilities to really go build out a commercially viable product. And one of those things is we've got agentic features, we've got native AI connections and integrations and serverless functions and a whole bunch of things. And so don't think that what you see in Blueprint is all that is there. There's a lot of other rich capabilities as well.
Awesome. I have also a question whether Blueprint design also allows previewing subscriber user onboarding process, or you can only do that in development environment. Tim,
Do you want to take that?
Yeah.
No, that's a good question. So currently, what you preview, the live preview in Blueprint is more about the end users of your subscribers, and once they're in the application, using your workflows, using your capabilities. But yeah, that's an interesting feedback that I can take to the team in terms of being able to kind of show some of the subscriber aspects as well. What does it mean to be invited to use the Launchpad application that you put to market? So yeah, we'll follow up on that.
Mm-hmm. Tim, and related to that, so apps built with Launchpad, can they be fully branded to my own branding? I know we showed the dog theme and this. What if?
Yeah, definitely. Like Jason said in Blueprint here, like Blueprint's really kind of prototyping and showing you the initial set of possibilities here. But as you go and develop the application, you can, as a provider, build your own look and feel theme, right? So not just the colors, but the fonts, the layouts, everything. All of that's up to you as the developer of the application. So as you go into Launchpad Studio, you really get a lot of options around look, feel, layout, things like that, branding, icons, logos, all that stuff. But you can also go beyond that, because as a provider, you may be selling this to subscribers that want to apply their own branding and theming to the application. So you may be selling to banks or insurance companies. They want to make it look like just one of their applications. And so you can make it so that your app can be customized and they can kind of create their own theme as well. So there's that other layer that Launchpad has.
Gotcha. Tim, another one for you, I think. How easy is it to include a GenAI step in the workflow?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's very easy. Actually, that's something I probably should have shown while I was walking through the blueprint. But just like a human task step where I'm asking the human to look at information, make some decisions, you can add a GenAI step right there in the workflow as part of a process. And then you can see where that fits in for the blueprint. Once you go to Launchpad Studio and start developing the application, you can kind of fill that in from there and use our GenAI Connect rule to very easily define your prompts, pass data in, choose what kind of LLM you want to use and things like that, all from that one rule. So very easy to configure as well while developing.
Awesome. I think we've answered the other questions I'm seeing as we presented. You talked about collaborating with people so you can share access to your blueprints and collaborate with people on it, right? Uh, so we've covered most of it. I think we are good and we are at time.
Okay, awesome. That's a wrap. So thank you, Tim and Lena. And I'd again encourage everybody to reach out to us directly. We love having conversations and not leave this all up to the AI to support you. And so love to see how we can help you build and scale your software business, drive more revenue in 2026, and see how you can leverage it. It's not for everyone, and but for the folks that it's a good fit for, it's a massive opportunity to really drive revenue and scalability as you go into next year and beyond. Thank you so much. Have a great day.